Parshas Boy, Tovshin Ein Hey. We'll start with something short but sharp. One of the questions that many of the Meforshim, the commentaries, ask is that this Parsha begins introducing the plague of Arbe, the locusts, one of the 10 plagues, where Moshe Rabbeinu says, Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, go to Paro because I've hardened his heart and I want to show him who's boss. But Hashem does not say what the next plague is going to be. Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron go to Paro, and they say, this is what Hashem said. How much longer are you going to play around like this? Because if you refuse to send my nation out, guess what, buddy? You're going to have grasshoppers, not for lunch, but for breakfast, lunch, supper. You're going to have a serious problem. These locusts, these grasshoppers. The question is, where did Moshe Rabbeinu get this from? When did Hashem specify this? So we know that one of the awesome tzaddikim that lived during the 1600s, and he was murdered al Kiddush Hashem, his name is Reb Shimshon Ostropolia, Reb Shimshon from Ostropoli. Reb Nosson Zal said about him that his brain is bokeh rekiim. His brain splits through the heavens, like super, super high level. And he gave answers to many of the difficult questions in the Torah. Unfortunately, because of the way he was murdered, we lost the vast majority of his writings. But the little bit that we have is spectacular. So he mentions this question, and he says, let me show you, in the first pasuk. It begins with the words, Vayomer Hashem el Moshe. Hashem said to Moshe Rabbeinu, Boy el Paroi. Go to Paro. There are many Sforim, starting from the Sefer Yetzirah, that teach us a lot about the Hebrew alphabet. We know the Hebrew alphabet is called Loshen Kodesh, the holy language of Hashem, with which He created the world, with which the Torah is written, and there are many deep secrets in each and every letter of the Aleph Beis, and in combinations of letters, different things. One of the ways that we look at the Aleph Beis is that the letters are grouped by which part of the body is used to pronounce that letter. There are what are known as the Hey Moitzois Haper, Chamisha Moitzois Haper. There are 5 parts from the mouth from which a person speaks. There's the tongue, there's certain letters that one cannot possibly say without using the tongue. There are certain letters that you can. The letter Aleph, Ah. I said Ah, an Aleph with a kametz under it. I didn't use my tongue at all. I didn't use my lips at all. The Aleph comes from the throat. There are 4 letters, Aleph, Hey, Ches, Ayin, which are called groinos. They come from the throat. The letters Beis, Vav, Mem, Pei, Bumaf, it's called, are letters which you must use your lips. Beis, impossible to pronounce any one of those 4 letters without the lips. And so on and so forth. And the letters that are part of the same set are considered to be interchangeable at times. One of the codes, we know that the Torah Hakdosha, the Holy Torah, has many deep codes and formulas that Hashem put into it. The 13 formulas that the Gemara is based on, the Yud Gimel Midoy Shator and Adreshes Bohen, Gematria, many codes that are used to understand and interpret the Torah properly. One of the codes is where these letters can be switched. So, for example, in the 2 sets that we described, Aleph, Hey, Ches, Ayin, we said that all 4 of those letters come from the throat. The Aleph and the Ayin are interchangeable sometimes, and the Ches and the Hey are interchangeable sometimes. So too in the second set that we gave, Beis, Vav, Mem, Pei, the Beis and the Pei are interchangeable, and the Vav and the Mem are interchangeable. Again, it's not something that we, people on our level, are qualified to say when and how to use it. The great tzaddikim of the past, who were Balei Ruach HaKodesh, who had direct connection to Hashem, they knew how to apply these formulas. And Reb Shimshon Ostropolyezel says, take a look here. If you take the word paro, pei, reish, ayin, hey, and you insert, take boy el paroi, put boy into paroi. Let's do a substitution for what bays can substitute a pei. Aleph can substitute an ayin. If you insert in the word paro, if you put in the bays instead of the pei, and you put in the aleph instead of the ayin, you have the word arba. So that it was this code, and again, Moshe Rabbeinu knew these codes, the great tzaddikim knew these codes, and knew exactly how to interpret this. The Balaturim, again, one of the great tzaddikim tells us that in the opening word here, in the word, this parsha is called Parshas Bo, and the word Bo, Beis Aleph, Beis is 2, Aleph is 1. That opening word tells us that in this parsha we're going to be introduced to the 3 final plagues. Boy is 3. In Parshas Vayro we had 7, and in this parsha we have the grand finale, the 3 final plagues. In the middle of this parsha, we have the Jews fulfilling one of Hashem's important requests. Hashem said that I promised Avraham Avinu that his children are going to go through quite a bit of suffering before they get to Eretz Yisrael. They're going to be strangers in a land and go through tremendous difficulties. But I also promised him V'achreichen yetzu b'rechush gadol, that after all of that suffering, they're going to leave with tremendous wealth. So Hashem said to Moshe Rabbeinu, please, daber no, Bosnian, please ask the Jews to approach their neighbors and to borrow all of their gold and silver, everything, to borrow it permanently. Usually when somebody borrows something permanently, that's called stealing. When you borrow something and you don't give it back, it's called stealing. In this case, this was authorized by Hashem. Hashem, who owns everything, Hashem said, I'm telling you to borrow it, and I'm telling you you don't have to return it. And the Gemara tells us that 1,000 years later or so, the Egyptians came before Alexander the Great to make a claim that everybody knows the Jews are thieves. They stole all of our gold and silver. They came and borrowed and they never gave it back. And Alexander said, wow, sounds like you got a good legitimate claim. Let's see what the other side says. And there was a representative speaking on the part of Klal Yisrael who came and said, they are 100%, and we've hired a good team of Jewish accountants to do the accounting, and we came up with a figure of 36,437,000, exactly what we owe them. However, once we had these accountants on our staff, once they were working for us, we also had to make another calculation of the minimum wage for 600,000 people for 210 years working, which we never got paid. And everybody would agree to a minimum wage. And that comes out to a little bit more than 36 billion. That's like $360 billion. Alexander said, makes perfect sense. What do you say? What did Egyptians say? They said, we'd like to think about this overnight. And they were never seen again. Never seen or heard from them again. They hightailed it out of there. They understood, everybody knows to trust the Jewish accountant. Jewish accountant knows. So they knew there's no way out of this. So here Hashem used the word please when he told Moshe Rabbeinu to please ask the Jews. And Rabbeinu Zal comments about this in Likutei Moharan, that we know that there are certain desires that all of us struggle with. One of the most difficult desires is the desire for money, the worship of money. When money becomes an all-consuming interest, when a person can't think, can't sleep, can't eat, can't live, can't study Torah, because they're totally preoccupied about money. That's called taivas mammon, the wrong type of relationship with money. And Rabbeinu Zal teaches us that each one of the holidays, each one of the major holidays, Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot, is a time when a Jew can be cured from one of these taivos. Pesach is the holiday when a Jew can be cured from the desire for money, because we see in the Torah, Hashem had to say, please go get this money. Why? And the Torah says, Vayash'ilum. When it says that the Egyptians lent it to them, it uses the term Vayash'ilum, which, if you know your Hebrew grammar, implies with force. The Egyptians had to forcefully lend this gold and silver to the Jews. The Jews didn't want it. What Jew doesn't want gold and silver? What Jew doesn't want money? The answer is a Jew who is cured from taivas mamon. A Jew who has no interest. You ask me, what am I interested in? I'm interested in Hashem. I'm interested in studying Torah, doing mitzvahs. I'm interested in my family. Money doesn't interest me. I need it for certain things when I need it, so I have it. Hashem gives me what I need, But to say that that's an interest in life, to say that that's a goal, that's an objective in my life, to make money, what are you, nuts? Where do you live? In America? In New York? I'm not from America, I'm Jewish. And a Jew has a different set of values completely. So here, the Torah tells us that Uvnei Yisrael osu kedvar Moshe, the Jews followed Moshe Rabbeinu's instructions. Vayishalu mimitzrayim klei chesed v'chlei zol v'smolos. They borrowed from the Egyptians silver, gold, and garments. V'Hashem nosan eschein ha'am beinei Mitzrayim, and Hashem placed into the eyes of the Egyptians the grace of the Jewish people. Hashem made the Jews attractive and special in the eyes of the Egyptians, that the Egyptians should want to give away everything they had to the Jews. The Egyptians should force it upon them, as it says, Vayash ilum. Rashi says on the word Vayash ilum, even what the Jews didn't ask for. The Jews asked, do you have any silver? Do you have any gold? Even what the Jews didn't ask for, the Egyptians said, well, 1 minute, don't leave. We have this other stuff also, this other expensive stuff, this expensive porcelain and this, all kinds of stuff. The Jews said, can you give me one of these? Tul shnayim, take two, take more. This is what Hashem was able to do, to put into the hearts of the Egyptians. Rab Nosson Zal, in Likutei Halachos, in Orach Chaim, Hilchas Megillah, Halacha Vav, paragraph 11 and 12, Rab Nosson Zal discusses the topic of wealth. We know that the Gemara tells us that one of the things that makes the life of a person difficult, extremely difficult, is poverty. Especially, the Gemara says, digduke anius. Severe poverty can make a person go out of their mind. Person can't think straight, can't make rational, intelligent decisions, because they have a noose around their neck, because they're going through such a difficult test. As difficult as extreme poverty is, wealth is a bigger test. The Gemara tells us. Having wealth makes it much more difficult for a person to behave in an intelligent way. And we see today, you can just open a newspaper or listen to the radio, or look around you, and see the nutty, insane things that wealthy people do, many of them. Rav Nosson Zal says, so then what's the story? It's like it's a lose-lose situation. Poverty is no good for me, wealth is no good for me, so what's good for me? So Rav Nosson Zal explains that the main solution for wealth is poverty. Meaning, for a person never to forget where they came from, where they come from, and to always consider himself, to remember himself in his poorest state. No matter how poor he is, no matter how medium he is, no matter how wealthy he is. We know, for example, Rav Nosson Zal says, we see in the case of David HaMelech, a king of the Jews, a king of the Jewish people, who was very wealthy and very successful. And despite that, when you read his book Tehillim, When David HaMelech speaks to Hashem, he says, Ki oni ve'evyoin anoichi. I am a pauper. He uses every kind of term to describe himself as being poor. Va'ani oni ve'evyoin. And Rab Nosson Zal says it's appropriate. It's normal and sensible for a person to realize, to remember how they came into this world. You came into this world with a sweater and pants, or with a skirt, or with a gown, or you came naked. Each and every one of us, each and every man and woman came into the world with nothing, zero. And that being the case, nobody owes you. Nobody owes anybody anything. Hashem doesn't owe anybody anything, and anything and everything that Hashem gives us is a gift. It's a freebie. It's not something that we deserve. We started out, we brought nothing. Person comes into a business, this one says he's going to run the business, and this one's a silent partner. He's putting money into the business, even though he's not going to be working, but at least he's putting money in. What did you put in? What did each and every one, did we put in anything? Hashem put in the soul, the parents, the father puts in the bone structure, the mother puts in the flesh and blood, and what did you put in? What did each and every one of us put in? Nothing. For a person to always be able to remember that, and Rav Nosson Zal says, and we know that even the greatest of tzaddikim, the Torah makes it clear, Ki ein tzaddik ba'oretz asher yaseh toiv v'lo yechteh, that there's almost no such thing in the world as a perfect tzaddik. Even tzaddikim make mistakes. They sin. So that being the case, again, even the biggest tzaddik doesn't have to feel that Hashem owes him in any way, that Hashem is indebted to him for anything. How much more so people like us, who if a person has bread and water, a minimum of bread and water, to be able to say thank you for that, to be able to recognize that even that I don't deserve, I don't deserve it, to appreciate it. And if that's the case, we know the Gemara says that it's natural when a person is receiving something for free, when a person didn't really earn something, doesn't really deserve something, they feel embarrassed to look into the face of the one who's giving them. When somebody gives somebody gifts, they give them something for free, the person on the receiving end feels ashamed and embarrassed. They don't feel arrogant, they don't feel like a big shot, they feel like a small shot. If they realize that I have nothing. What I have was given to me as a gift, as a freebie. And based on this, a person who has this kind of understanding, that person will enjoy life. The Mishnah says in Perek Yavos, Ezehu Oshir hasameach bechelkoi, who is wealthy? A person who is satisfied and happy with what they have. A person who keeps this understanding will be able to be happy and satisfied with whatever they have. Whether they have poverty, whether they have wealth, they never take personal credit for it. They know, again, I came into this world with nothing. Everything that I have was given to me. And I'll never forget that. Nothing's going to change that. As the Zohar HaKodesh says, Man dehu ze'er, ihu rav. One who is small, one who considers himself small, has humility, he is great. He is great, and him, Hashem can trust him with greatness. Such a person, Hashem can trust him with wealth, because Hashem knows the wealth won't turn him into something ugly. As the Pasuk says, Mekimi me ofor dol. Those people who consider themselves like dirt, they're humble, Hashem takes those people and lifts them up. Mekimi me ofor dol me ashpoy sorem evyoim. Lohoishivim nedivim, to sit them with the wealthy people. Such a person, Hashem can afford to give him wealth, to make him successful, to put him together with other wealthy people, because Hashem knows that Hashem won't get displeasure from it. He'll get nachas from seeing that this person never forgets where they came from. This concept of humble beginnings. And this is one of the reasons why Rabbi Nosson Zal says, why we had to go through those 210 years of slavery suffering, and poverty in Egypt, that was to prepare us for the wealth that we were going to receive on the way out. Each person on the way out was loaded with gold and silver, and Hashem wanted to make sure that it wouldn't hurt us. Hashem wanted to do whatever He possibly could to make it as easy as possible for us to handle it correctly. The preparation for that was the poverty before. And those that know a little about life know that people who were not born into wealth, people who know what it was not to have, those people, when they do have wealth, when they do have success, they appreciate it, they enjoy it, and they don't misuse it. Unless, of course, there's always free choice, and there are always crazies. There are people who, despite everything, they'll be arrogant, unappreciative, etc. But we're talking about certain norms. A person who Hashem loves them, and Hashem allowed them to experience, to taste what it is not to have, and then they do have, they can appreciate it, they can enjoy it. Whereas we find today, in many wealthy homes, unfortunately, most of the kids are on therapy and psychologists and psychologists, all of this stuff, because they can't handle it. They can't handle starting off having everything and not being able to enjoy it. You don't think that when it's normal for you to have everything you need, when you never tasted what it is not to have. You don't know. There's a pasuk in Koheles, Ki Yisroin ha'oyer min ha'choshech. You can only appreciate light from darkness. From darkness, min ha'choshech, from night. If you have a night, then you know what day is. Then when it starts getting light out, so wow, it's daylight. A day is coming. If a person doesn't know what darkness is, they can't appreciate, they can't recognize light. And this is an incredible message for each one of us when we go through our ups and downs in life. To know that here Rabbi Nosson Zal shows us that this was a gift from Hashem to us, this poverty. That's why the Gemara makes a statement. The Gemara says, Yo'eh aniyusa liYisrael. Poverty is beautiful for the Jewish people. The Gemara describes it, it says beautiful as red straps on a white horse. Picture an all-white horse having these red straps on it, how it stands out. It shows so what does that mean? It means humble beginnings. It means a person having that ability to remember when I didn't have, and to remember how I came into the world, and all of us came into the world with nothing, and thereby to be able to appreciate anything and everything that we do have. This is why when we sit at the Seder night on Pesach, we're supposed to, it's sort of a paradox. On one hand, we're supposed to put on our holiday clothing, supposed to dress yantiftik, and the one leading the Seder is supposed to have a pillow, royalty, a king. And then he's eating this matzah stuff. He's eating lechem oni, poor man's bread. And there's a debate among the tzaddikim where they even put salt. Usually, throughout the year, a Jew never eats bread without salt, without putting salt. The bread, our table, today we don't have a mizbeach like they did in the Beis Hamikdash. The Gemara says today a Jew's table is like the mizbeach. It's like an altar, and the food that you eat on it is sacrifices, sacrificial food. If a person eats properly, like a Jew should eat, making a bracha, eating kosher food, eating the right amount. So bread, which is one of the most important foods that we have, we make birchas hamazon on bread. It says, Al kol korboncha takriv melech. A korban in the Beis Hamikdash had to have salt put on it. So the bread that we eat also has to have salt put on it. The only exception to that is the matzah on the Seder night, where according to the Tikkunei Zohar and according to the Ramah in Shulchan Aruch and other poskim, poor man's bread means poor man's bread, no spices, not even salt. The matzah that when eating matzah during the meal afterwards, you can put salt on it, but the motzi matzah, the matzah's mitzvah, nothing, no trimmings, just plain. Why? Again, to remind us that on one hand we're royalty, we're sitting at that, we celebrate, but in order to appreciate the royalty, in order to appreciate the wealth, we need to remember where we came from, that we started out with nothing, and everything we have is a gift from Hashem, literally a gift and a blessing. One more extremely important note. This parsha, we hear about the Jews about to leave Egypt. They leave Egypt. It says they left 600,000 males besides children. V'gam erev rav ola itam. And besides the Jewish people, there was an erev rav that left with them. Rabbi Nosson Zal speaks about this in Likutei Halachos, Orach Chaim, Hilchos Dvorim Hanoyagim Besuda, Halacha Dalet. And he says that a person who wants to undertake this incredibly important mission of bringing people who are far from Hashem, bringing them close, that person has incredible, dangerous issues to be concerned about. That person is taking incredible risk in doing that. And the person needs many tricks. The person needs to know a lot of things in order to succeed in that kind of project, bringing people close to Hashem who are distant. Because we find that even Moshe Rabbeinu, the leader of all the prophets, where the Torah testifies there was never anybody like him, still, regarding his attempt to bring the Erev Rav close, he did not succeed. He didn't succeed. Not only didn't he succeed, but they caused all the terrible trouble that the Jews had in the desert. The golden calf, the breaking of the luchos, everything, everything was all because of them. How can one be protected? How can one be assured that they'll succeed in this mission? Rabbi Nosson Zal gives some very concise advice based on chapter 20 in Likutei Moran. There's two pieces to this. In order to bring people close to Hashem, you need Torah. Rabbeinu Zal writes in Likutei Moran, Yafutzu ma'inoisecha chutza. Your well springs are what can reach out, or what can go outside to people who are outside the borders of holiness and be able to bring them close. So you need Torah. The Torah you've got to get from Hashem. When you go to Hashem to ask for Torah or to ask for Hashem's help, you got to speak softly. You got to plead. You got to beg. No power, no pushing, no pressing, no pressure. No, now. No, I need it now. There's no such thing when you're talking to Hashem to say, I need it now. The Gemara says a person who tries to force something before the right time when it comes to Hashem delays it further. They can delay it another 100 years, chas v'shalom. A person who is doichek es hashor. So when it comes to standing before Hashem, pleading with Hashem to give me the knowledge, give me the Torah, give me the assistance, the divine assistance that I need, there, do not mention any of your merits. Don't use any of your personal merit. Any mitzvahs you did, anything, don't talk about it. Just pleading and begging like a pauper putting his hand out, asking for charity, asking for a free gift. When the tzaddik, when the person who's doing this addresses the people that he's working with, and he's dealing with people who come with a lot of baggage, there's good and bad in them. He has to recognize that every single person has good, but he's got to know there's other stuff also. There he has to have a certain degree of toughness. He has to have a certain strength to be able to withstand some of their negativity, some of the baggage they're coming with. There he's allowed to use, there his merit comes into play. But when it comes to approaching Hashem, standing before Hashem, he's got to be careful. Rabbeinu Zal in Likutei Moran, in that chapter 20, shows that when Moshe Rabbeinu struck the rock, when Hashem spoke to Moshe Rabbeinu and told him, speak to the rock, and instead Moshe Rabbeinu struck the rock, that was tied into this difficult circumstance. The rock symbolized Hashem. We find the term Tzur Levavi. There are many places where Hashem Tzuri V'goyali, Hashem is my rock. And Hashem was telling Moshe Rabbeinu about how to approach Hashem, that you never strike, you never use strength, you never use force when you're approaching Hashem. It's always pleading and begging. Even if you know Hashem wants this, there's nothing in the world Hashem wants more than people who are far from Hashem to come close. And the coming of Mashiach is dependent on that. Everything depends on that. Still, no force, no pressure, no trying to make anything happen before the right time. It takes incredible patience and tolerance. I remember, I've mentioned this in the past, one of the most important rabbis in my life, Rabbi Tzvi Rosenfeld, Zechron Livracha, once undertook a teaching job, and he had been told that he was like the 6th teacher within the past 3 months for this class. They got rid of 5 guys in front of him in days, and he was number 6. And he came into a class of killers, all bums, all the last thing in the world that they were looking for in their life was education. And the reception that they gave him when he first came was, he was sitting in front of the class, all the desks of the students were all the way in the back. They wanted to make him feel as unwelcome as they possibly could. And he saw the situation, he tried to feel things out, and Hashem blessed him. He immediately understood that teaching them Chumash, no chance in the world. He's got to bring out the nuclear weapon, stories. Rabbi Nachman writes in Likutei Moharan that when a person is totally far gone, when they're totally disconnected from all the plugs, the only thing that can inspire them is a story. He started telling them stories, and it didn't happen in a day. Over a period of a couple of weeks, gradually, the desks started moving closer, and those students, one of them became one of his sons-in-law, the other ones became one of his closest students and followers and everything. It took patience, it took tremendous patience, no force, no today, no now and no today. Shem should help that we should be zeicha to follow the advice of the Torah and have the patience that we need as students. Those are the teachers, and especially when we stand before Hashem, anytime we're asking Hashem for anything, to know, to plead, nothing, Hashem doesn't owe me anything, and there's no such thing as now. Hashem, it seems to me that I need this thing desperately. If you, Hashem, know that it would be good for me to have it now, then please let me have it now. And if you, Hashem, understand that I don't need it now, give me the seichel to understand that I don't need it now, that I need it tomorrow or in a year, or I never need it, period, one of the two. Should be zeich in this zechus to have the patience to see the geula shlema now, that Hashem should send Moshiach Tzidkenu, the geula shlema b'mher b'yameinu, amen v'amen.